Hello, Mardreamin. My name is Shannon Battenfeld. I'm with Circonte. I'm moderating today's session. Thank you for joining us. For those of you new to Mardreamin, welcome. And with that said, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Natasha Wetton.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining the session today. Marketing ROI reporting. It's not so scary. I named this session a few months ago, I think, when I thought that Halloween would be top of mind. But for those of us in Philadelphia in particular with the World Series, that just seems like a distant memory now. But the sentiment still remains. This talk is a session to make reporting feel a little bit more accessible and talk about why that's so important. So I'm going to keep jumping through. Special thanks to the sponsors. A little bit about me. I've been in the marketing operations space for over 10 years, and specifically with Pardot MCAE for 6+ years. I mean, it's probably before then, but that's sort of my rough figure. And specifically have been working within the clinical research industry at B2B companies for the past couple of years, where I've found a really great home and it's a great community there. Oh yeah, I just saw the comment. Let's go. I'm so excited. I wish tickets weren't so expensive. But yeah, in my personal life, I guess I'm a baseball fan. I'm a fan, but especially right now, I'm based in Philadelphia and a pet parent to my 3 babies right there. And I love to cook and I love to play pickleball and volleyball. So that's a little bit about me. So I will jump in now. When the speaker call came out for these sessions, I was thinking a lot about resources in my current role and in previous roles where ROI reporting, really any meaningful marketing metric reporting felt really daunting and a little bit scary, and hence the name, because of kind of the echoes and the buzzwords and everything out there. This is like my shoddy attempt at making a word cloud slide, but just when you're on LinkedIn and you see the post and it's like, you have to have XYZ model for multi-touch attribution. You need to know what channel everyone's coming in from. It needs to be tagged completely perfectly. You need to move them along the right stages. It always felt scary to me from the sense that when I'm, as a marketing manager, there's a lot on our plates. So that's sort of the premise of this talk, is to talk about when you have some challenges up against you, especially resource constraints, how do we go about reporting and showing marketing's impact to the business, which is ultimately the most important thing. Because it's, I want to make it feel accessible for any team, even if you're a team of one, because most marketing teams, especially those teams of one, can't report on everything everywhere all at once. We want to, and there's tech vendors out there, and there's leaders at larger companies that might have the resources that are telling us that we have to report on every touch point, for example. But it can feel really hard, and there's a lot of data points now that we can track as marketers. But with those resource constraints, what is the most valuable, and what are the things that we should focus on, and how do we actually just start somewhere and get consistent and focus on those things and feel confident in that. And the one acronym that I think from the word cloud that should ring through is ROI. It's something that, practically speaking, everyone in the business is going to understand. They're going to understand that when you're coming up with your dashboard that's proving marketing's impact to the business and their return on the investment that they have made, the budget that they've been given, everyone can kind of hear it and understand it. Oh, okay, this is ROI. This is I'm proving marketing's impact, and I'm proving what business we have generated. It kind of cuts through the clutter of all the other touch points that you dive into when you're pulling your hair out trying to figure out a problem, and you look through all of the metrics, or you're trying to figure out where to put the next dollar. Like those minor details, yeah, you have to sort of look at other things, but ROI kind of cuts through the noise, and it is that way to gain credibility. So that's why that is the title of the presentation, to kind of focus on that acronym and how to prove marketing's ROI. And I've kind of nodded towards some of these things earlier in the presentation. You might be strapped for resources. I know that not every marketing team has a set of analysts that can work towards providing every touch point and every data point. So you're a one-person marketing ops team. You have a lot going on. So where do you start? Or you have a limited budget, and there's a lot of tech out there that likely can really help in terms of like proving analytics, but you might not have the budget or the resources to actually use that like attribution or attribution technology that is really expensive. You might not even have the resources to optimize it, or your leadership just doesn't understand marketing. But this is perfect for that, because we're going to really cut down the noise, and part of this is thinking practically, having common sense about what the leadership is going to understand. I mean, it's okay if they don't know what some of those buzzwords were earlier. It's okay. Like we're going to get them to understand marketing's impact on the business, because their confidence in us is honestly more important than tracking every little thing. Okay, so all of this is to say, despite some of these things, despite the challenges that we're all up against and limited resources, we have to start somewhere. So I'd say that's the crux of this talk is where do we start to prove marketing's impact to the business? Starting can sound hard. I mean, it sounded hard when I first started getting into marketing reporting. I was like, I'd have no idea where to start in terms of like actual reports and in terms of like providing actual data upwards into the business. So like we do, we want to start with our goals. And I think for the purpose of this talk, I know there's a lot of goals, and goals vary per time period and per organization. But for the purpose of this talk, we're really focusing on achieving these goals. We want to gain trust within the organization, which has so many benefits to, you're reaping if you have the trust of your leadership and of your organization and you're well respected, then you have a lot of wiggle room to do different and interesting things as a marketer. Obviously, we want to make better decisions with our marketing spend. We want to be able to see some of the nitty-gritty metrics to understand if a particular channel worked or not. And then the third one is kind of similar to the first one, but you want to be able to confidently and in a very straightforward way communicate with leadership, whether leadership to you is just your line manager or whether that's the CEO or it's the CMO. So that's, for the purpose of this talk, is kind of the goals, and where I always keep my mind is like, okay, I want to gain trust. I want to gain credibility so that we can get more budget, so we can do different things, so we can test different things out. And again, I think I've said the word practical a few times in this talk already, but I just can't help but use it. I think I'm kind of cutting out a few steps because of this talk, the length of this talk, but just jumping right into, these are the 3 charts that you could start with in terms of confidently and clearly communicating marketing's impact to the business and return on investment. number one, kind of like a leading indicator type of chart where you're tracking qualified inbound leads only. Okay, I like kind of just, I don't want to say the word ignoring because we're not ignoring them. We are following up with them. We're still doing our due diligence on warm leads, on leads that like a download or a LinkedIn, download or something that's warm that has like they're not raising their hand for us to contact them, but like truly qualified inbound leads week over week based on where the lead source is. And by source, I'm not necessarily referring to channel. I'm more so referring to, did they come in through the website demo form? Did they come in through the live chat? Did they come in from an event and they were a very hot lead? But week over week, look at that. And that's kind of your leading indicator and leadership's leading indicator that you're still keeping the train running. And this is really important. And I'm passionate about this because I worry when I used to share with leadership, like, but look at these 75 that came in and they filled out our form on LinkedIn to view a webinar on demand. Like, that's great. And we should know about that. And we have to follow up. But unless they've moved on to being a hot lead and they've actually expressed that they want us sales to reach out to them, I'm just not including it in my starting somewhere scenario. So I hope that makes sense. But that's the first one. And then the second one, number of opportunities generated by marketing activities by stage. I think this is a pretty common report, and I'm referring to like direct primary campaign source. I'm not talking about campaign influence, which again, I think is a very valuable report. But for this purpose, it's kind of like that direct, like marketing generated based on the primary campaign source on the opportunity record, which might take some manual work if your processes aren't totally set up, but you can kind of evolve. This is, again, the starting somewhere example. And then just that number of closed won opportunities. And this is frankly just a number. And it's I'm going to see on the next slide, I'll just skip ahead to there for now. Like on the dashboard that I use daily, it's really just a number. And you can drill down, of course, dig into that report, but it is to show the number. And then, I don't have the screenshot here, but I'd also recommend adding in the dollar amount to that, whatever the actual dollar amount was. But this is the visualization of what the last slide. You can see on the left that the kind of qualified inbound marketing generated leads week over week, kind of get a sense of like what happened in week 2. That's, your drill down moment. That's really helpful for leadership too. And they can kind of see where we've been and where we're going. And then the opportunities by stage in the middle there. And then the closed one. So I think this is an extremely simplified version of what the outcome of your dashboard in Salesforce will look like if you continue to grow it. But it is, again, a great practical place to start. But how I see some in the comments, like we don't know all of our sources, which makes sense. And it's not easy. But I would say, and it sounds, when I'm up against that, it's like, there is sometimes some manual effort. And I think sometimes we don't want to accept that or admit it at least, but there's going to be a manual effort where you just have to drill down and go and look at every single opportunity. If it came in from the website, for example, and truly just like see what happened with the sales team in there. But that's sort of side note tangent, but how I think this is, again, the simplified version, but it's, activate customized campaigns, create a campaign, a lead form that's on your website. Obviously, you're going to have different sources and various like integrations. Like if it's LinkedIn, you might need Zapier to connect it back to Pardot, or if you're on, live chat might have something separate. But create that. The Pardot form ultimately would be the end goal to get it in there. And then Salesforce campaign reports, which that's kind of the way in which you'd be able to generate that first report in the last slide, with campaign members type of reporting, as well as opportunity reports that really focus on the primary campaign source. And then training and explaining, just training the sales team on when to update and populate, and then explaining to leadership what's going on. I mean, I put the whole lot of communication in there because it does require everyone to be on the same page and understand what each thing means. And that's also why it is really hard to be a team of one or a small team, because you have to have those conversations very often, and people just, it's hard to get to that bottom line every time. Any suggestion on how to dig and identify unknown sources? I think maybe would need more context. I mean, are they sort of just showing up in your database, or you mean people that are still unknown to you? I think if they're still unknown to you, then that wouldn't be really in this report anyway. But if they've come into your database, I think I would need to know the specific example of why the source isn't known, because they definitely should be. At a certain point, maybe it might take some time to get there, but if it's coming in as a known prospect, I think a good goal is to at least have a lead source or a campaign association within Salesforce for every single lead. Okay. Oh yeah, and then so this slide is, what about the I in ROI? I haven't really touched on kind of finding an automated way to say X campaign cost $5,000 and it yielded Y. And the reason for that is because, frankly, I don't even do that anymore because of how marketing has evolved. And not that I've been in marketing for decades and decades or anything, but even in the last 10 years, the campaigns that I run, they're scrappy. They have to be human. They have to be personal. They're the I have the sales team going out and various touch points, and I have, there's a webinar and there's a blog and there's a white paper and there's a case study and there's a wide array of things, and it's people talking about it behind the scenes, and then they come into the website and there is no source, for example. It's just, that's the nature of marketing these days, and it's better that way. I mean, it's a little bit more human, and you're getting your content out there. But that was kind of a tangent, just to come back to the slide and say, in terms of calculating an actual ROI figure, I would look at your closed won opportunities and each source of those and compare it to your budget figure or your actuals figure for that campaign type. Or if you can drill down, for an event, for an example, it is a little bit like it's cut and dry. And those are a little bit easier to show the impact and the exact figure. But you can find ways to show the return on a true investment number and actually develop a figure. I'm going to click through to the next one and kind of get back to the end, just so that can answer a little bit of questions. and this slide is really just here to address and acknowledge that there's a lot missing from this. There's so much that we can do when it comes to marketing analytics reporting, but this is meant to be a starting place and to remind you that your leadership cares about consistent reporting and positive movement towards impacting the business's bottom line. I mean, I think we all know that, but that's what they care about. And sometimes we don't need to get so complicated with it. We really just need to, within the limits of what resources we have, need to be consistent and show a figure and show that ongoing to gain the trust within the organization. So yeah, that's the last slide. Thanks again to the sponsors. And thank you to everyone here. I saw one quick question. It's a little bit small. Okay, so sources.
Hi, y'all.
Hi. Any thoughts on how you measure B2B closed won revenue when it moves through distribution and the automated tracking ends with the handoff to the distributor? Ooh, I do not. That's interesting. I mean, it seems like a really industry specific question. I would assume you just have to get some kind of process in place to close the loop between your organization and the distributor. But yeah, that is a challenge. That's a tricky one. I mean, you could agree kind of internally with your organization or your leadership that the point at which you pass off to distribution is marketing's kind of like golden step, like, hey, this is a challenge that we're having, and then in the meantime, in the interim, and maybe with that end goal of like closing the loop. Yeah, start small. Yeah, that's definitely what I was thinking. Like, start small, make sure that it's accurate instead of having tons of dashboards. Yeah, and you can grow from there for sure. Any suggestions? Oh, we already did that one. I think that's all of them.
We have one more Q&A question. Actually, I can put it up on the screen. I just have to share my screen.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share. All right, how do you set the primary campaign source on the opportunity?
So me personally, I think there's a few ways. So within, I think it's if you have campaign influence enabled, or maybe it's honestly already out of the box this way, don't quote me, but if Pardot kind of identifies that first touch point. So if it's like a web lead, like they came in through a demo request or a pricing request, those are forms that are set up for me right within Pardot, and a few of my Zapier connections are set up that way too, that's the first campaign that they've interacted with. So I think it's Pardot first campaign association. Please don't quote me. That's a little rusty. But when I convert the lead into contact and create an opportunity upon conversion, it actually does auto-populate. But frankly, and it's not ideal, but sometimes sales will create the campaign and they know the process, but they don't always follow through. So I'm looking at almost every opportunity that has activity related to a contact that's coming through a campaign, and I'm adjusting it manually if necessary. It's like top priority weekly. I hope that answers the question.
Got one more here. If your lead object and convert lead, it will pass to an opportunity. Oh, so it looks like that was a response. Is that right?
Thank you. Wait, if you lead object and convert, yeah, exactly. I would like note that in my implementation of Pardot, I anyway, this is nuanced, but I have a campaign that sometimes triggers as the first campaign because it's them visiting the website, makes sense. And sometimes it populates with that, but I would rather it be their more like substantial campaign. So I'm all for the manual checks of that one at least. Perfect. Thank you everybody for your help in answering that one.
Awesome. All right. So are there any other questions? Oh, we've got another one in here. 1 second. We have got some time. I'll go ahead and share this. Let's see. Oops. Sorry, y'all.
I think in terms of like best way to capture last touch ROI, I would leverage Salesforce and Pardot's campaign influence and attribution models. They're good. I mean, they work. They're just I struggle with them in my current organization, and I've struggled with them in the past in smaller marketing teams, merely for the fact that it's like certain sources don't carry all the way through, and certain data doesn't carry through exactly like perfectly the way I want. And then I find myself in leadership meetings going, oh, well, that's something we're working on. I'm getting the source figured out, and that's not what they want to hear. So I've been really focused on just like very consistent and straightforward, everyone understands reporting, and that's going to evolve. But yeah, best way to capture last touch ROI, I would recommend the out of the box, or it might not be out of the box, but I know that as long as you have campaign influence 2.0 turned on, that you will have access to some of the or you will have access to kind of their default models, which includes last touch.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you guys all so much for joining us today. Got about 3 minutes left, so if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. But again, a very special thank you to all of our sponsors and our speakers. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much, Natasha. That was incredible. And
thanks, everybody. Go Phillies. Bye.